This is the Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Francy. Thank you for coming on the podcast for the first time. How you doing today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, it's
And I'm
fun
doing
to
good.
talk to
Sorry,
people.
just enjoying my day off.
Yeah, that's nice. It's cool to talk to people around the world, using these tools, and sometimes they're hard to use. But yeah, we're here and we're live, and you are a dreamer, podcaster, mail lady, and mental health advocate. And also want to tell people that we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. You see that icon on the top. So later, people use the coupon code and get 1 month free on that platform to check it out. We are a featured podcast on that platform. That's an audio only platform. We'll be on there later today. And I just want to thank you again for being on the show. This is actually going to be episode um, of the podcast. We're at 965 episodes since 2016. Now tracking out on Apple Podcast. And this episode, we're going to get into, like your website says, what is life with Francy? That's the topic today. And we'll go back to your link, and people will be able to connect with you on your link tree, Life with Francy. For those of you just listening on audio, that will be fully clickable. The link tree, Life with Francy. So thank you for being on the show again today.
Yeah, I love it. This is new to me, so I'm excited.
So like you moved from Puerto Rico to the U.S. You're in Kansas right now, or you're somewhere else?
Yeah, so a little bit about me. Was born in New York, but raised in Puerto Rico with a Puerto Rican mom and a Eureka mom. So my biological father was just born and raised in New York, but his parents are from Puerto Rico. And
Mhm.
then that situation didn't work out, so we moved back to Puerto Rico, and I had a great childhood over there. And some things happened that I was not happy with my mom. So I decided to come and live with my biological father when I was 15 years old. And now I just been I went to Maryland, and from Maryland I came to Kansas, and I have been in Kansas for the past 18 years now. Time flies.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'm talking to you from New Hampshire. So I've been a northeastern kid. I was born in Mass, but yeah. So it's interesting that you've had been in these different places, but like you tell your story about. I think a part of your background we were talking about mental health, self love, self care, trauma, and your hobbies, and the fact that you're a podcaster. So we can kind of get into it. Maybe you want to give a little bit background. You can take a choice where you want to start with your life story, maybe.
Yeah, so like I said, I had a great childhood. My mom and my dad, who took me in when I was one. I just don't like the phrase stepdad because he's like so much more. And they gave me a great childhood with a lot of cousins. I got like 50 cousins in between both families. And so it was a lot hectic, 5 to 10 kids. And but then at 9 years old, my biological father just decided to show up and bust that bubble of like innocence and love and care and everything. He introduced me to abandonment, um, problems, things like that. So things didn't work out. We didn't stay in touch. And that's how I was introduced to depression, because I was hurt because I wasn't having contact with him. And now at that time I had a half brother, so that was a lot for a 9, 10 year old child to process as to
Hmm.
why are you with him but you're not with me, and then why can I get just go visit and all that stuff. So anger shows up as well, and now my mom doesn't know how to handle this sweet little girl that turned angry.
Hmm.
And then as teenager, hormones kick in, and I have sex as well. I have a relationship with my mom where she knows that I did something. Like if I ask her questions, she knows already the answer because she already knew what I already did.
Hmm.
So instead of having uh, conversation about it. Like, was it consensual? Was it okay? Are you okay? What's happening? She called the judge and said, "Hey, I come and marry my daughter." I was 14 years old.
Oh wow, just
So,
very very strict kind of traditionals. Like if you it's the first time you gotta get married,
yep,
right?
that's it. She is not going to have that nonsense in her house. So you are going to respect her and respect her rules, which I
Right.
appreciate the respect part. You know,
Yeah,
that was a huge
yeah,
part of her family respect between a child and adult, adults with child, so things like that. So, all of that, I was done with her. If you
yeah,
called the judge, that was on a Monday, and on Wednesday, she had the judge come in on a Friday, I'm out. So I went and
yeah.
got married. Of
Mm,
course, that didn't work out. And
yeah,
I called my biological father, who was a stranger, still like, "Hey, stranger that I only met once, it's your turn now. Let me go with you." So he bought the ticket, and I left Puerto Rico at 15 years old.
wow.
I left the language, the culture, the
Must have
family, the friends, everything, and restarting it
is that a
in
big cultural
Maryland.
shock? Is that must be a big shock to move from a culture like that where you're probably more comfortable and you see more people like yourself, and then you go to a place where you probably don't see people like yourself as much, and it's got a totally different culture. In terms of like the American Midwest versus Puerto Rico must be like two different worlds.
It was insane. The school parts, our school are more open, so it's more building alongside, and the classes, like
Hmm.
between classes, you're outside. You're not inside a building.
Hmm.
The lunches, it was for free, and we had like a whole meal: rice, beans, burritos, milk, all kinds of stuff. And
Yeah.
I grew up with 24 cousins, so I had a cousin in each grade. So I thought
Oh,
that I
you got
ruled
all
the
that family.
school.
Yeah, you got a big family. Not by yourself. You must have been hard
Yeah,
to kind of get inserted where you're different than the majority, and then you don't have the backup of all that family. You don't have the food. That's a big thing culturally. If your food is totally changed, then you're not. I
I
can
had to
understand that
eat
being an African.
leftovers.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
the
being an
first
African.
type of abuse that my biological father did. He gave me a PhD. I have a weird sense of humor, so it's like my coping mechanism. But that was like my first thing of abuse was feeding me leftovers because I'm an
Mhm.
only child. So my meals were fresh, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And if my mom or my dad didn't like something, my mom would make me something else.
Oh wow, and
Like
then you
that's
were.
huge with my friends because they have multiple kids and they
Yeah,
do of like, if you don't eat what's on the table, you're not gonna eat. And I'm like, I don't think so. That's not happening. I'll get up, I'll make them something to eat because that's like a huge trigger for me when
yeah,
it comes to food. But it's just because I was an only child and I was blessed in that part that my mom had the time and
to
she was
do
a
it.
stay-at-home mom. So if I wanted a different meal, she just gave me a different meal. But then when it
Yeah,
comes to friends, I had this friend's childhood from kindergarten to ninth grade. We were in the same school. So that's a family when it in it with itself.
yeah, best friend. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I got
And
a friend that I'm still friends with from like I was in elementary school, and I'm like 55 and he's 54, and we still talk. Even though
yeah,
he lives in Albany or live in New Hampshire, we were just talking before the podcast, and we were friends from like playing Legos together to like having like kids. Now we have families, but we still talk, and that kind of friendship is like really core to have somebody that close to you
yeah.
that kind of knows you. I
I
totally
have
get
at
that.
least 10 people that were with me in kindergarten. So I have known them for 20 years.
Yeah,
30,
that's a
30
big deal.
years. Oh my God, because I'm 35. So for 30 years, I have had the same friends. So then
I
I
think it's good
moved
to have
over
that kind of
here.
connection. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
it
important
is.
because that helps you like feel connected to the world. Because like if you feel very isolated and you're very kind of shut out, then that causes its own problems. So maybe you talk about like how that was dealing with Kansas, dealing with the Midwest. How was that?
Well, yeah, then the friends are different over here because everybody has their cliques. I came in on junior year to an
Mm-hmm.
English as a second language school. So then I got introduced to all these different cultures. And then, especially within the Latin community, because you have the I'm better than Mexican, I'm better than
Oh, oh,
Panama, Panama is better than Salvador, Salvador is better
oh. So
than this, so we
there's a
have
whole
all of that.
level, yeah, level thing going on. Like in the
And then
Caribbean,
you get to school.
yeah, I mean the Caribbean. My wife's from Barbados, and some people from West Indies or Bahamas or Jamaica, and they're like, "Oh, well,
Hmm.
this is better than that." And that,
Yep, we got it within the Caribbean too, because the islands fight which island is better.
yeah, it's
Of course,
better,
Puerto Rico is better. I'm just
yeah,
kidding. But
yeah,
yeah, I was like, I called my mom, and I remember it was like the first week or second week of school, and I was like, Mom, why don't we like Mexicans? Like that was literally a question that I asked because I was
yeah.
confused, and she was like, I don't know. And I was like, I don't know either. I'm meeting Mexicans. I was like, Mom, when was like the last time that you met somebody from El Salvador? Like, why do we have these things between cultures and we really
Hmm.
don't even know each other? So it wasn't until I came to America that I was like,
It's
oh
kind of
my
like
gosh.
the
So I
yeah,
had a bestie from El Salvador.
yeah. It's
I
a
had a
very
bestie from Uruguay. It was awesome to see all the difference.
well, it's
So
really
then,
interesting of how the segmentation. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a Portuguese neighborhood in outside of Boston, and and there was a Portuguese neighborhood, there was an Irish neighborhood, there was like there's all these different a Catholic kind of neighborhood, but it was very segmented. Like I was outside of Boston, even if you go into Boston, oh, what happened?
yep,
Oh, we lost you.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you get very segmented structures, and then you like if you even like you're saying there's segmentation among people from the islands or from
Hmm.
different. And sometimes the major culture is like, well, if you're speaking Spanish, they figure you're all the same, and then they don't understand the differences.
Oh,
Even in African
I got
American, if
that
you're
wake up call.
yeah, I mean, if you're African American and you're from Boston versus Atlanta, it's like you're not the
Hmm.
some of the in the majority culture say, well, you're both the same. It's like a Boston black person versus a person from Atlanta, they're not the same at all. It's
Mm-mm.
culturally very different, and people don't sometimes
Hmm.
don't get that in the majority culture. They're like, "Oh, you guys are all the same." It's like, no,
Yeah,
no,
no, definitely not. So, yeah, when it comes to Spanish, there were some words that you would say it and everybody will laugh and you'd be like, oh my gosh, what did I say? And they're like, well, your word doesn't mean what you think it means. I was like, oh
yeah,
no. So, like things like that, it was a lot. It's so funny. But then at the end of the year, they will give a test to the school to see how where your English was at. And it comes
hmm
out that I was a genius and I came up on the top 10 of the school. So they sent me to an American school. So now
oh
another
wow,
culture shock in my senior year, no less.
wow.
So I
So
go
you
to an
lost like
American
all your
school
friends that you
now.
were worth. Did you lose a lot of friends
Everything.
because like you're moving to this? Yeah, they sometimes they don't understand that when they move you into another thing, they don't realize the sociological impact. Like they're thinking about
Hmm.
education, maybe thinking they're going to give you more opportunity without thinking about the sociological aspect, which is important.
Yeah.
I understand people
Yeah.
want to move up, but it's like, or getting better opportunities, but then they forget about the other pieces of your life.
And I needed the resources still because even though I could understand English and I could read it and write it, I still needed help with the cultural differences and all the school differences and things like that. So that now you threw me on everything American, everything is in English, And I mean, I'm still thrive, and I still graduated the year that I was supposed to,
Hmm.
and that was like my biggest accomplishment too. I started the podcast. I always say like that's freaking awesome that I was able to graduate in a different country in a different language the year that I was supposed to. And 6 months into
That
college,
shows that.
the
Yeah,
what?
I mean that shows that it shows that you were very dedicated to
Hmm.
to try and you making it. So that's important. You had the drive to do that.
Oh yeah. In Puerto Rico, we always had one English class from elementary school till all the classes. You always had to have that, and then you had to do homeworks and things like that. And between because I was raised between Puerto Rico and New York, then when I was with my cousins from New York, from the East Coast, then they will make me speak English. So it's like I already had the practice. So then I had just had to practice more on the writing. And but I was very focused because
Mm,
I wanted to learn five languages, but I only know two. But that was like my passion growing up because
mm,
for one, I love talking. And I'm like, whatever language, I'm
yeah,
like, okay, well now I gotta learn Russian because I know somebody from Russia or like Australia, whatever, it didn't
yeah,
matter. Like I need to know it. Australia isn't English anyways. But just you get the point. Like if I French,
yeah,
so
yeah,
I wanted to learn different
yeah.
language. I love
Yeah, I
that.
mean,
But
I live. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean it's important, but I think a lot of Americans don't realize how important language is. Like if you live in Europe or you live in Asia,
Hmm.
you'll see there's people who know multiple languages. They'll know Japanese, they'll know Taiwanese, they'll know Chinese, they'll know German, and I mean I was living in Japan for 2 years, and I was like so like behind because I'm an American, don't know Spanish, only know English, doesn't don't know Japanese, and I had to learn Japanese while I'm working because I'm in a Japanese environment, and they were like speaking Japanese, so I had interpreters and like special headsets and stuff to and an interpreter with
Yeah.
me all day and a translator, and I actually took classes with my sensei, but it was like I was behind the eight ball compared to like I knew this guy from Australia and this guy from Germany, and they knew like five languages, and I'm like American system really doesn't prepare you for that kind of global world where I was meeting
Mm-mm.
people from all over the world. They had five languages and I only had one, and I'm like that's a big hindrance.
In the defense of America, I'm just gonna say like America, the country. It's just English is the first language. As for Africa, Europe, you have the different states are different countries. So, they travel more within countries. So, and like
You have to
somebody
learn
explained
it.
to me
You have to
from
learn it.
Africa, you have the different tribes. So you have to different countries, different towns. So you have to speak because I met somebody from Nigeria that knew 11 languages. I was like, how is that
Yeah,
even
yeah.
possible?
Africa is crazy.
But it's just because of the access. If you want to have access to more people and you travel a
Yeah,
lot, then things like that. But yeah, I love it. I can talk about languages forever because it's so entertaining and like so awesome. Anyways, so school parts and now my things between my relationship between my biological father, it was never a father daughter relationship. It was more of like friends, because I met him when I was 9 and then came to live with him when it was 15. Now, from the get go, it was wrong. So he was trying to put the wrong message in me. I went from my mom, just not talking about sex or drugs or alcohol to like being more flexible and having those conversations, but not like a parenting talk, more like friends talking.
hmm,
Um, he gets a promotion in Kansas with the post office. So we move over here to Kansas. And now his training goes to a different level because now he's going to teach me how to be the woman of the house and how to take care of a man and how to take care of the kids because I had to take care of my little brother. So a relationship that should have been father-daughter relationship and turned more into like a husband and wife relationship. And living with him for 7 years, at the end of that relationship, the last 3 years, then I got a PhD on every single type of abuse. So he makes sure that I lived it so I
Hmm.
can help other people that are going through it. So that's like my PG version, so people get it that I speak in
Hmm.
codes. If
Yeah.
if you would
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
to know more, I'll talk. I am an open book, but like I keep it PG. So I went through hell and back with him, and then my early 20s, I was in denial of everything that was happening, and I
Hmm.
went to drugs and alcohol. But because I
Yeah.
was working for the post office, I still had to come to work. So
Hmm.
my attendance wasn't great. My responsibilities and stuff, it wasn't the greatest, but it was like my early 20s. And then I met my partner, and it's been crazy in itself in the past decade. But when I left my biological father, then I went into straight depression because it's grieving. But I'm not grieving my father
Hmm.
and my brother. I'm grieving my husband and my son, you know,
Hmm.
metaphor, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
metaphorically speaking. So I was having a hard time between all of those emotions together because I was still not, um, the reality of all had not hit me yet.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I
Hit
had a
the depth
hard
of it.
time seeing myself as a victim. So now it's all the denial. After the depression comes anger. So now I'm stuck in anger and for forever and a day. My boyfriend is trying to help me out. So now I hate him because he's trying to help me. And I'm an independent woman that got this and I'm going to figure it out. If there's a problem, I'm just going to figure it out on my own. Well, that didn't work out for me.
Hmm.
But I did, I
Yeah.
hit more bumps than I should have because I didn't want to take the help of everybody. And then my friends, they already knew that there was something weird in the relationship that we had together between my biological father and myself, but they didn't know how to handle it
Hmm.
or come to me or talk to me. So then they were trying to be a support, but that's a hard one because when you cross that line, there's not a lot of people that cross that line, but it does happens in between families. But then how do you
Hmm.
handle that conversation? It's not
Yeah.
easy.
That's a
And
hard thing.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was a hard decade of holding it to myself, feeling guilt, shame, and responsibility that didn't belong to me. So now I'm struggling, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. There was a couple of times, that I just wanted to end it at all because of all of that. That was the shame. The
The
shame
weight
was
of
the
it.
mo-
Yeah.
the horrible.
Yeah.
It
It's
was
hard.
for for those that feeling shame, get rid of it. It's not
Hmm.
worth it. It is not worth it. Whatever happened, let it go. I know it's easier said than done, but let that shit go. Excuse my language.
No, it's
So
okay.
then, um, and then I found podcasting about 6, 7 years ago. So that was in my early 20s. I'm 35 now.
Hmm.
And 6 years ago, so at the end of my 20s, I'm like, okay, enough is enough. I am not going to bring all of this stuff with me to my 30s. So I'm not doing the same things that I did in my 20s in my 30s. So this is enough. I started looking for therapy and mentors and podcasting. So I got into podcasting, and it was mostly because I was into network marketing. So I always
Hmm.
had a multi-level marketing company that I was promoting. So I wanted the tools and resources, to put myself on social media and things
Yeah.
like
Yeah. To
that.
get the sales out there.
Yeah, and then I found out like you can find stuff through mental health, and people were talking about big feelings and dreams, and
Yeah.
journaling and diamond painting. And I was like, what is all of this? So
Yeah.
I got my
Good.
people that I still follow. And as podcasting helped me so much. And yeah, with my career in the post office, because I am a mail lady during the day, but I started at the plant where I was working nights. And
Hmm.
then I was done with the craziness that was happening in there. It was not a healthy environment for me. So I started getting myself ready to become a mail lady. Well, they used to make fun of me because I was like so lazy and not do anything or whatever. And they will be like, "You're not gonna survive as the mail lady because
Yeah.
even
You
though
gotta
the
be on a
Easter
schedule.
day,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
mail lady has to do it. Like it doesn't matter how you feel,
Yeah. It's a
what's going
schedule.
on in your life, you have to get it done and get it done with a smile. Not everybody does, but this mail lady does.
Wow. So
So
that's a
I
big
switch
shift.
and
That's a big shift from you didn't want to do that, and then you found you had to go to more discipline, which is like
yep,
probably harder.
yeah, it was because it was in a season that I was still feeling all of those nasty feelings. So I wasn't ready to be put into a more positive environment, but I wanted it so bad. I was
See
seeking
the
for it
structure.
so bad.
Did the
So
structure
because
of
I
it help you?
knew,
Did the fact that it
yes,
had a schedule and a structure, was that something that would help you? The fact that once you got on that, did that actually help you?
the rules and regulations were a lot different than the plant. So yes, I needed that. I needed that structure. Which it was what I was missing too between my parents, because my mom has like a structure and respect and a strong foundation. Where my biological father, it was more of like whatever goes goes. And it's the same thing with the post office. The plant was like that, and then switching the customer side, you have to watch it because you don't have your coworkers watching you. You have the actual
Yeah, the
customers
public, your
watching you.
customer. Yeah, it's like you gotta be on your toes. Like, because
Yep.
like, yeah, customer
And,
service is a whole different thing because then they can put, yeah, you're in the office is one thing, being in front of the customer is a whole different thing.
yep. And not only that, is like you go to these people's house. Like they don't come to you. You
You
go
go to
to
them.
them
Yeah.
every single day. And do you want Mrs. Johnson pissed off at you because you misdelivered the mail? No, you
No,
don't.
you don't want that.
So that helped me out a lot, switching careers within the post office. And that helped me become a little bit more responsible. I have a little bit more neutral on my emotions and um, be able to seek out for help, and thank God, that the post office offers EAP.
Oh, so
Um,
that's how you got therapy? You were able to get the
yes,
program, so you were able to
yes,
get like into therapist and through the services that you get through work, your benefit
yes,
package.
yes.
Well,
So
that's
that's why I always make sure that I mention it because EAP is there for you. And I have used it a million times and I am not afraid to use it at any time. So you just check with your employer to see if they offer that kind of programs. And
yeah.
then,
I guess the question though is like, was the shame and the guilt of it kind of kept you from using those services for a while? Was there a point where you finally realized you needed to use the service? Do you remember like the point where you said, "Yeah, maybe I actually need to take advantage of that"?
well, I don't, well, I think but when it comes to mental health, not a lot of people are comfortable talking about it. And that, I mean, my
Hmm.
family is like, no, you don't go to therapy.
Yeah,
You just suck it up,
you don't go
buttercup,
there.
and
Even
keep
if
it
you have it,
going.
you don't go.
Yep. So yeah, it was uncomfortable at the beginning, just thinking that there's something wrong and
Hmm.
having shame and guilt over it. And but then I finally was like, I need to talk about it. And then with therapy, it is more of like the feelings, to get you to give you the tools and resources. But then when you're done with that season, what do you do? So I like therapy and I am still in therapy, but I also the fact of coaches, because then coaches give you the tools
Coaches,
and
right? Coaches.
resources on
Yeah.
like how to move forward, especially if it's somebody that you can relate to. And that's how I found my a
Hmm.
coach, because for the longest time with on and off therapy, I was still stuck and I couldn't understand why. But it was because I was not
Hmm.
talking about my trauma, because I didn't feel comfortable in talking to a therapist about it. Even though that I
Hmm.
know that they're professionals and they have it, they can't relate. They are not going through it. So
Yeah.
you really stop yourself from talking about it, which I want to tell you, please don't. Please talk to your therapist and please get anything that you have holding in your throat, get it out just
Hmm.
because you feel a lot better. And that's what I did when I was able to talk to my coach of sexual trauma. Then I was able to speak more and freely. And it wasn't until after 2 years of therapy, of coaching with her, that I'm able to say, hey, I am a survivor of incest. That is really hard and a tough
Hmm.
pill to swallow,
It's a hard thing. Yeah.
but it helped me so much just to be able to say it. And by that time, like I'm loving myself. So I was able to give myself grace and compassion and understanding and give a little bit of light. So as I'm going through all this healing, I'm still in my healing journey. I will be healing till the day I die. But
Yeah.
when I was starting my healing journey, I couldn't see that. I couldn't see me being able to say it on a live platform,
Hmm.
and not be
It's a
triggered
big
by
thing.
it, because I was having a
Yeah.
lot of breakdowns. And it wasn't until so at home, you're comfortable, right? And whatever happens at home stays at home. So I'm a little bit, I let the Puerto Rican out. I let it, I just say,
Yeah.
like sometimes there's a little
Yeah.
bit of high level talking, but not outside. And at work, the mail lady can be acting like that. And the
Yeah.
mail
Yeah.
lady acted a fool with another coworker. And I was like, oh no. So what is it? Because now I have done the therapy. Now I have done the coaching. What the heck can I do to get me out of it? And I did a mental health evaluation, and that helped me get diagnosed with 7 different diagnoses, where now I have the understanding of how my brain works and what is because of trauma and what is because I just was born with it. And I
Hmm.
just need to treat my brain different. It's not that there's something wrong with me, it's that my brain is
Hmm.
different and it needs different things. So, through the podcast has helped me a lot, because so 6 years I got into podcasting just as a listener. 4 years ago, I was like, I'm gonna have my own podcast, and my friends were like, just start it because I want to listen to it, and you won't stop talking about it. So 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I hit record because I was already in a way that I wanted to talk more, especially about mental health, because
Hmm.
I have seen it in my family, especially with depression and anxiety, that I wanted to be the voice to the voiceless and be like, hey, I have gone through it. I am literally going through it with you. Let me share you my journey in hopes that it gives you a roadmap to find what works for you. And then 6 months into my solo podcast, about how it is when you first start, you don't know, you know that you have a passion for it and you want to do it, but you really don't know
Yeah.
where it's going to
Do it.
lead
Yeah.
you. 6 months into it, a virtual assistant reached out to me, and I took it as I was ready for guests. So now I bring people in that are experts in their trauma or experts on anything, and come in to share their tools and resources. So I love that I have a platform now, and I am very open about my
Yeah.
trauma. I am very open about my mental health journey and all the tools and resources that I have used that got me to where I am today.
Well, I think podcasting is really really, it's a very powerful platform because like I got into it, back in 2016, and I was primarily focused on musicians because I'm a producer, I'm a musician. And then, I started talking to musicians, and a lot of musicians and singer-songwriters have a lot of problems because we write
Mhm.
about them in our songs, right? And then I said, well, how can I seg into therapy and life coaching and mentoring and start bringing those people on? Because I was listening to all these stories from these singer songwriters that kind of exercise their demons in their music through their art. And I was talking to
Mhm.
poets and artists and actors. And if you check with creative people, they use their art to kind of be catharsis. And so they use it as like art therapy to work through their problems. You can see a lot of actors that will work through their issues through their art. And musicians, we do the
Mhm.
same thing. But I said, why not actually open that up and actually talk to actual therapists and life coaches and shamans and all kinds of people? So I started finding that this platform is so good to actually, I learn so much and I get so much information by talking to so many different types of people that it assists me in my own mental health by hearing all these stories and knowing that, like, wow, everybody has problems, everybody has issues, and people have the courage to talk about it. I think that the communication just going both ways is very powerful, and I think that is healing in itself to be able to continue to to open those doors to talk to people from all over the world. And I think that's why we love podcasting.
I love it. Yes, and that's where I'm at now, especially with my journaling journey. Trying to let that creative side come out because I don't want my pain to be in vain, and I just I want to help others because I know that I have gone through hell on back, and some of my stories is not like for everybody, but is for somebody out there. And if they can relate, I send you a hug. I am so sorry that happened to you, but I'm here for you, and
Mhm.
I'm hoping that when I share, my tools and resources, that somebody can be like, oh man, yeah, let me go and try that to see if that works out too, and they can start their healing journey as well.
But when you put it out there, it's like a lot of people have fear. Like fear is the kind of thing that like it puts a ceiling on everybody, right? So the fear that stops you from, telling your story, it stops you from kind of dealing with your reality. The day you actually challenge your fear and you go out and you speak with your voice and you say the things that you were scared to say, or you put them down on paper, that's when you start to have movement. It takes people different points in their lives where they realize. And I was not I was a very shy person. I never even wanted to get public speaking at all. I never wanted to be in front of anything. And suddenly I realized as a musician, I was a keyboard player and I was always in the back. So the only way I'm going to get anywhere is I actually have to use my voice. I'm going to actually have to sing a song, and I'm going to have to get in front of people and get in front of the mic. And that's a hard thing if you don't want to do it. But if you like have a passion to kind of finally get out there and start to tell your story, it kind of relates to like anybody who's gone through that kind of trauma of not having a voice or not being able to speak your
Mhm.
voice. The minute that you start talking to therapists and you can actually bring it out, you talk to a life coach, then you start to find that people go and they create their own, they become a life coach or they become a therapist or they become a podcaster because then they realize they have something to add to the conversation, right?
Yep, yep, that's it, and yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to share some of my tools and resources that have helped me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe talk about like you made the journey from going to your therapist, you used your program, then you went to a life coach, then you started doing your podcast. So maybe talk about like the tools that you're bringing to your public.
So I have always used journaling. Always have notebooks, planners, and things like that. So for anxiety, that was like, okay, so depression was the first one that knocked on my door. And for depression, it's more of like feeling your feelings. I have learned through all the time, that you just have to feel the feelings, and sometimes just watch your face. And if you have to come back to bed, you come back to bed, but you're like, oh man, I got up and I watched my face. So I'm capable of doing stuff, because when you're stuck in it and everything is, it gets very loud in your mind, so you have to like do some movement to come back. And then journal. I either get prompts from Pinterest, as well as the prompts that my mentor used to give me. I still go back and do the work, because she was a sexual trauma coach, and she
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of tools and resources when it comes to topics like that. So I like to go back, because it brings me into self love and self care, because I was so detached. Because when you deal with that kind of abuse, you're detached from your body,
Yeah, the
because
kind of
you
survival
have to like
mechanism.
leave to,
Yeah.
as a coping mechanism. So like bring your attention. Like I didn't even know how disconnected I was from my body till I met her, and
Mm.
how she helped me to get to where I am today, that I can say, hey, I love myself, I'm awesome. It took a long time to get here.
Yeah.
And with anxiety, I just had to teach myself to have control. So that's when the planners came in, because it's more of like, it's not just what I'm doing, it's how I handle the day. So I
Mm.
can either write different planners for different seasons. I can have people that have color codes. I can't do the color codes. I need different planners for different themes and things like that, and notebooks. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the internet. I mean, there is, between YouTube and podcasts, you can find a topic, help on any topic that you are able to. So I did YouTube University, like people call it,
Yeah.
in all type of abuse, in all type of hard things that I was dealing with, to help me go through it, you know. And now with my podcast, I'm offering a platform, for other people to come in and talk about their things too, and how they can help others.
So you have like therapists come in and coaches come in to talk about their different techniques and to describe like so that's kind of like what I've been doing is I've been having a lot of in the last 2 years bringing sex therapists in, been in abuse therapists coming in talking about sex trafficking therapists that actually
Hmm.
get people out of that trade and talk about the process. And I think it's just having that different channel. I like to talk to a lot of different folk. I don't have a narrow focus. I kind of have a very expansive focus. And I know some people think that feel that they rather have a very specific focus, but my approach has been to kind of have this really wide ranging focus. So like in your the way you work on your platform, do you have a particular focus, or do you kind of have it like an open door to like what you want to work on?
I'm still working on it. I know that my main niche is mental health, but I think like right now I'm keeping it too abroad. So I'm trying to bring it down. But I just love talking to people. But it's mostly about mental health. I just love anything about it, either as a coach perspective or as somebody that went through hell and back and want to share this story.
So when you first started podcasting, were you kind of just like telling your story like, in a solo podcast without any guest, and you were just like you using it as a way to kind of express yourself in an open forum, and then you started to bring in guests when you started to see opportunities to have guests, right? Or that's
Yeah,
what you
it
started talking
started so crazy. It started mostly as like a journal, like a blogging
journal. Like,
podcast. Yeah, like I was talking about whatever was like, I was treating it like a reality show. Like I
you just
had to
kind of talking.
update people that don't even know me about my life and things like that. And it wasn't, till like I'm going through it that I'm like, okay, I want to share my journey. I want to share my story, but not so much focus on the present, more
Mhm.
of like the past. So then I'm starting to do like more of tools and resources of things that reminded me of whatever. And then I love doing my monthly reviews where I let you know how the month went, because now that
Oh,
I batch record for podcast interviews, like I'm done on my podcast for the year. So, but I still have solo episodes. So then on my solo episodes, I'm like, hey, this is what happening in between the interviews, because I'm so detached from the time that I
mm.
recorded the interview to the
Oh, so
time that
you do a
I
lot of
published the
recording.
interview.
Oh yeah, I'm a live podcaster just because it's my style. Like from the start, I've always liked the way it works. I used when I first started, I did have kind of like a structured podcast, but as a musician, I'm kind of a stream of consciousness musician, more like jazz. So when I started doing my podcast, I felt like I was better at kind of doing it in a live setting, and that was just my style. And I know there are people that like to have things that are more produced, but I just found it was kind of freeing to not have to think about being perfect. I just like to kind of just let it be what it is, and that's been my
Yeah.
style. You know,
I get it. I love it. I'm here for it. But I'm real and raw in my podcast, and there's no editing.
yeah.
But live, yeah, props to you, because I'm here freaking out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, live is kind of cool because you get the what I feel about it is you get a very authentic vision or view of a person. Like it's like a natural conversation. What I try to do with this show is we just have a natural conversation and we kind of go down wherever road it opens up. So if you start talking about something that I kind of let you take the lead, and we might have a overall point
Hmm.
thing that we want to talk about today. We're talking about life with Francy, right? So you're talking about that, and we're just letting that evolve, and it's kind of no rules other than what you want to talk about. And I find that people feel that that's authentic. They feel like, well, this isn't an infomercial. This isn't like a
Hmm.
pitch to sell brand
Yeah.
X. This is actually talking to another human being and getting
Hmm.
their real point of view, right, and their real experience. And I think
Yeah.
that people find useful because if you feel like, oh, they don't have a filter on this, they're telling the truth. I think people feel like, wow, that's something I should probably listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's just since I have been in the podcasting world for so much, and I have seen the people that get to the top, and then some of them have crashed because they have put a persona, but then when you're famous and your persona is not the same,
Yeah,
then everybody's like all of that.
yeah,
And I'm like, I don't do all that. Like I have to know your personality. You feel a good vibe between us before I bring you into my podcast. But like, I love it. I love it. You're like tougher than me, stronger than me on that part, because I just freak out. I know this has gone smooth. My podcast usually goes smooth as well. I keep my interviews between 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the vibe that is going on. But my
mm-hmm.
main question is just, what is life with you? I just want to know, who are you as a person? How did you get to where you at today? If you have something to promote, come promote it. If not, alrighty, well, have a good day. But I want to have those deep conversations of like, oh yeah, I went through it. And even if you didn't go through it, how did you achieve how you are today? Even if you had an easy life, but I haven't
Yeah,
met one with an easy life yet.
yeah. I mean, my background is like I'm a cancer survivor. I was age 27. I had a
Mm,
level 3 sarcoma. And it's kind of like, how did I change from being this really painfully shy person to this person that suddenly is doing podcasts and doing music and being in front of people? And, the person that was pre-cancer, I wouldn't go in front of anything. I was in the back. And then, like, once I survived it, I actually survived it. At age 27, I actually got through it and I didn't die. And I made it through. And then I said, well, what am I scared of? Why am I scared of public speaking? Why am I afraid of being like in front of the band? Why am I afraid of talking to people? And I say, if I can beat cancer, I can beat that. And I
mm,
just kind of pushed myself through. because it was this thing that happened. I think when I talk to a lot of people on the podcast, I find people have found had their own kind of, not cancer, but they've gone through something that made them realize that whatever was happening before wasn't working for them, that it wasn't allow them to be who they really could be. They're not actualized. They're not being their best version of themselves. They've been holding themselves back. And I find,
Yep.
like in the show, like that's what we end up finding is like people who have kind of gone through something and then they've realized, well, this is who I am. This is who I am right now. Wherever you were is where you are now. That's where you're going.
Hmm. And I'm excited for that journey now.
Yeah, because that's wide open. Because like you get the version of yourself where you don't know if you're gonna make it. People who feel like, oh, I don't know if I want to live in this world, and you get people, even though there's all these things, they find like the courage to say, hey, like, every day I get up is a benefit. Every day that I'm still
Hmm.
around, even though things are tough, you can find like the gems to say like, wow, yeah, there is something to keep on going. And so it seems like in your story, you found a way to get beyond a really kind of like a tragic situation and make it a positive. You take negative and you make it a positive. I'm a Buddhist, so a lot of times we take negative energy and turn it into positive energy. And you have the law of attraction. If you feel good, then good things will happen. If you bring out that good energy, then the law of attraction, the good things will start happening, and that path will start opening up. It seems like that's where you're on, what you're on.
Yep. Yeah, it's been the past few years I've been working on energy and bringing more positive energy towards me. And last year, was it last year? Yeah, I think it was last year. My word of the year was peace. I never took picking that one again because January 4th, I had a panic attack. So I was like, oh, yeah, this is exactly how you start your year of peace. But I actually ended up a year as peaceful as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
In my organized chaos, that's what I call my life now, an organized chaos. Because I have mail lady during the day, podcaster at night, and then my immediate family, as of right now, has 8 members in my family. So it's pretty crazy at home too, and I still find the time, and that's why I do the batch recording so I
Mm-hmm.
can have my podcast cover like it's done for the end of the year because I wanted to finish it before October because then the mail lady is working
Real hard.
12 to
Yeah.
14 hours and
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have time for anything from October till like February. We don't see anybody.
Oh yeah, because you want to be out. Like the thing about social media and podcasting is like showing up is a big thing and having a regular schedule. So if you have like your product, well, it's not product, but maybe it is. But it's like the idea, like having your episodes be consistently out there. Like I can understand why people pre-record to make sure that they're out there if they're doing all these other things and they can't do it live.
Hmm.
That's a good thing to actually be out there and have a schedule because that's one of the things I've heard is a lot of podcasts they feel after like 12 episodes they
Yeah.
people just stop. And I've been out there a long time, like since 2016, and I'm kind of like, well, I wasn't gonna ever stop. That's my thing is I gotta keep on going. I mean, I've got albums and albums, and like I'm not the biggest recording artist around. I just don't stop. I keep on writing. And a lot of people,
Yeah.
if they don't hit some goal, then they give up. My whole thing is like if I show up, things happen. And I don't and then, like to
Yep.
me it's every step on the rung. Just because some song, we write 100 songs, 2 songs work. Right. At 100, like when you're an artist, like a lot of times what you do, your ideas don't all of them don't work. I don't look at those 98 as failures. They help me get to the two that work. But that's just a different, it's a mindset. Because if you have the mindset, well, hey, I'm gonna give up because only two of them worked. That's
Hmm.
that's the perspective you have to have. Because like sometimes you just do it. I love music because I do it because I love it. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it whether
You're
it works or not.
Yep. Your mission and your passion has to be stronger than anything because it's your only motivation, especially at the beginning when you're doing it all by yourself.
Yeah, because you get that on your first podcast, like if you're like, well, I don't get like 10,000 views, I'm done. It's like, well, you're probably not going to get 10,000 views on the first one, right? So people sometimes they create unrealistic expectations, and then they're
Mhm.
not willing to kind of deal with the fact that like showing up in a world where there's so big, I have audiences, there are audiences all over the place. You've never, like you were saying, these people who want listen to your podcast. Some people either dig it or understand it, and they don't. Just so some people don't doesn't mean you don't. You give up because the ones that might be loud or the haters that say they don't like
Yeah.
it, right? There's always somebody that
Hey.
does like it, and you do it for them. There's always somebody that won't like something. So every time you show up, somebody's going to criticize, right? But it's like
Mhm.
at least you're doing something.
Yeah,
So hey,
I'm
look at
going
it.
through it right now because I'm on my in December will be my second year doing podcasting, and it's hard, and I have unrealistic expectations because I have so many episodes, but it's because I do two podcast episodes a week. So, that's
Mhm.
a lot of content to put out there. And I'm like, oh, why I haven't got the attraction or whatever. I'm still a nobody out there. Oh my gosh, but I love it. I love it. I got my 30 listeners on Spotify and 49 subscribers on YouTube. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, as you get out there, you start figuring out how you can get on more platforms and how you can get, your show like propagated to multiple places, and you never know which place is actually going to kick it, right? Like I'm on
Mm-hmm.
certain platforms I'm on, numbers aren't good on one platform, but they're good on another. And so, like,
Yeah.
when you start to propagate your show, and if you have a video show, you can still have an audio version of it. And that's what we do here. Is like we have the video, and it goes to the platforms that are video, but it also goes to, podcast world is primarily still audio. So there are like 11
Mm.
platforms we're on their audio, even though this is a video
Yeah.
podcast. And we
Yep.
sometimes will get better numbers on some of those platforms. And so it's like the
Mm-hmm.
idea is like sometimes you need to kind of just throw it at the wall and see where it goes.
And see what
And
sticks.
kind of yeah, yeah, pre-can pre like, well, this platform's the only platform. It's like, well, maybe sometimes you should push it as many places as you can, because you'll be surprised that some places start kicking off, and you're like, well, I didn't know they would kick off there. and it's just, and you do reels, you do clips. We started getting into taking like clips and throwing them up as reels on
That's
Facebook
awesome.
and
Yeah.
TikTok and Instagram, and that can give you a lot of people start coming in if they see key points of your reels. So if you go in and you
Yeah.
do that work, that can help push you out further. Because then if you get a core like 30-second, 90-second clip from a podcast and you throw it up as a reel, and then suddenly people find out about you. And that's just a matter
Yeah.
of you doing, you can get other people to do it for you, or you can do it yourself. Like there's nothing to
And
stop you
that's
from
what
doing it yourself.
I noticed that I'm putting too much content out there, but I'm not doing enough marketing. So that's why I am doing podcast guest appearances now. So I have taken a break from taking podcast interviews on my podcast, but now do guest appearances to
Mm.
promote the show and promote my own journal and notebooks and stuff that out there that I'm doing too as well.
Yeah, yeah. Showing up on other people's podcasts like this, that's a big thing. Like I actually have to do that more. I mean, I did a couple this year. I need to actually do more, but I do so many interviews that, I'm probably doing 5 a week. I'm kind of crazy,
Yeah, I'm close
but it's like,
to 100 interviews, but I have only done like 5 guest appearances.
yeah, I need to do more because they always tell you like that will actually push you out there more. So I've actually start booking myself as drop off, maybe not do 5 a week, drop down to 3 a week and do two appearances on somebody else's podcast to kind of push myself out there. But yeah, I mean sometimes I got on a train where like, hey, I can actually get 5 or 6 guests a week. So then they're like, oh, I'll
Hmm.
keep on doing that. And then sometimes you have to think, well, maybe I need to slow the train down.
Yeah, especially with Podmatch, which is how we found each other. I mean, it's been amazing. I have absolutely loved that community and the people that I have gotten from that community.
Yeah, it can really start to propagate. I mean, you can get reviews, and the reviews, if they, in the podcast was, if you start getting people give you like Apple reviews or Spotify reviews, those reviews help get your name pushed up on Google. So you start getting
Yeah.
that Google search authentication, right? So people start saying, well, this guy's got a lot of good reviews, and or this podcast has a lot of good reviews, and people start getting the word of mouth, and then you start getting more guests or you get more appearances because then like if you're a good guest or a good host, then more likely you'll get picked, and then it just
Hmm.
starts to exponential uh, uh, increase in your fan base and in the involvement of your audience, and that's the whole thing is they connect. The more the people get your name out there and they find out what you're about, that's real important. So, I mean, Life with Francie, that's your podcast. Is that the name of your podcast? Is that what you
Yep.
is that how you
Live with Francie.
so then you're on how many platforms? Like if you people you're on like YouTube and other.
Yeah, Instagram, TikTok, and my podcast and YouTube are all Life with Francie podcasts. I also have a Life with Francie Facebook group. I'm on Facebook. I said LinkedIn. I just started using LinkedIn not too long ago.
Yeah,
Patreon. I mean, Life with
yeah,
Francie.
yeah.
And
Well,
then you can
we
find it at lifewithfrancie.com too.
oh cool, yeah, our website. So that just every kind of use that key phrase, Life with Francie, but check click the link tree. I'm sure you've got all your other links off of there, and then check it out on any of the platforms. We're going to provide a landing page for this episode everywhere that you watch. So whatever platform you like to listen or watch, this episode will be on that. We'll have that later today for your fan base. And I want to thank you again for being on the podcast. We actually hit our hour mark. And it's always like it just happens naturally. We always just like, wow, it just happens. But
It was a
I
good
want to
one. It was a good one. I appreciate you.
thank you, and have a great rest of a Sunday. And thank you for being on the podcast. We appreciate you being on the Family
Thank you,
Goes
sir.
podcast.
And thank you to your listeners. Remember to leave a review on the podcast.
Thank you. Have a good day.